right. Well, good morning, Brew Crew. I'm Eric, N1JUR, and I'm hanging out with...
I'm Shannon, KC10HT here in the US, or 2 Echo Zero Oscar Hotel Tango in the UK.
You gotta put a rhythm to that, girlfriend. If you're gonna go on as many shows as you're going on, that's a long thing to say without putting a breath in between.
That is the rhythm.
Well, then you might want to ask ChatGPT to write you a little, ditty there, so it sounds a little bit more catchy. All right. Well, if you're watching live, say hello in the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from, folks. And maybe, hey, if this is your first time, welcome. You're officially part of the Brew Crew. Let's say hello to all those lovely people out there, Shannon. Who we got?
Yeah, I mean, we got 10 people watching, but only a few people chatting, so it's quiet out there. We got the usual Sean, AA4AT. We got Shannon, K1LY. Oh, they're rolling in now. We got PRK Radio, W1SAB, Chris, KD9, YSW, Hamman, CT, and I think I saw, what was it, W3PEW?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that was it. I think that's everybody. Oh, and Joe, cool. KI5, WWT, they all just found us.
Yes.
They burst through the doors.
They, just like Shannon, woke up at 9:30, hit the snooze button, then went, crap, Brew and Activate. I got to get on there. And then now they're just kind of sitting in their bedroom and watching us from the TV. But hey, all good, all love there. Appreciate that. So, hey, as we always like to say, for the new folks, Brew and Activate, hey, is all about real world POTA here. The wins, our slow days, the weird stuff, the lessons you only learn by doing, for sure. So whether you activate, you hunt, or you're just POTA curious, well, you guys are in the right place for sure. So with that, we always love to just kind of point out real quickly, if you want to continue to be part of all of this great stuff that we're doing here, make sure you hit the subscribe, the like, and the share buttons for both Shannon's channel and our channel. Heck, we need to promote Shannon more. Obviously we're trying to make sure that YLs kind of have a seat at the table here, front and center. So go give some love to Shannon's channel, spread the love there, show folks out there all the cool stuff she's doing, and maybe we can convince her further to start putting more videos out. But hey, for now you got Brewing Crew and things about tanks, and when the warmer weather shows, we'll maybe see more POTA activations. So all good there. All right. Well, so Shannon, I'm gonna just kind of poke fun at you because you've been doing a little bit of the show circuit. You kind of been repping your book there, doing all that great stuff. So what's been going on, man? Girly, tell us.
Since when do you not poke fun at me? Just saying.
Very true. Very true. Right. So,
for those of you guys who follow us around, I was on Ham Radio Clubhouse on Tuesday. Maybe that's a little bit of a dirty word around here. I don't know. No. But so you may have noticed I'm wearing my Hillbilly Hams shirt today because I did a little boo-boo when I was on Ham Radio Clubhouse, and I accidentally called Sean Greathead, Shane Greathead. So we're blaming Eric for that. I'm sorry, Sean. I will say your name 3,000 times now until I get it right and don't mess it up. And let me see, what else did I do? So I may have accidentally said that I wasn't invited to Eric's 5,000 subscriber stream. There was a general open invite, which I sort of didn't really pay attention to because I get a lot of Discord notifications. I can't pay attention to every single one. And also it was sort of like, did your moms ever tell you don't ask a girl out on a date at the last minute? And, they invited me to Ham Radio Clubhouse like 2 weeks ago. So I had to, maintain that commitment. So
Sure.
I'm sorry I missed Eric's 5,000 subscriber stream. I'm sure it was fun. I had tons of fun at Ham Radio Clubhouse. And they made me an official member of the Clubhouse, so I could be back on there again at some point. And Chris VE6YEA, he's down there talking about Tank Fest. How does Yeah, I'm going to Tank Fest in
Yeah, you mentioned it on the stream
I
on
did.
Clubhouse.
So either
So
he remembers that or I'm just going crazy. But yes, I'm going
no,
to
you're not
Tank
going crazy.
Fest. I'm going to Tank Fest 2026 at the UK Tank Museum in Bovington. I'm super excited. I'm sure, I'm going to have to figure out something to film that's not using my phone. Like, so if you guys have suggestions on what kind of camera I can use to
I don't do YouTube at all. I couldn't tell you,
um,
hardware or whatever to buy. You never
you know,
ask, This is my problem when I'm having a co-host who is so independent and is like, I'm going to do it myself kind of thing. Never ask the people around her that she surrounds herself with that have YouTube channels that, buy gear and we'll talk after, girlfriend.
So yeah, I'm gonna have to load up on the gear to bring to England because I want to film a lot of stuff there for YouTube and just for my own personal. I don't want to forget it because I think it's going to be an amazing trip. So I'm super
Now,
excited.
to be truthfully honest, long story short, I still for those that are members of the N1JUR channel, a lot of that stuff that you see when I do my members only post is straight from my my cell phone. So I'm just using the YouTube app creator. So, simple and easy. Just download the YouTube app creator and you can easily, make everything look nice and transitional. And you just save the video right to your phone and edit it right there. And, takes literally 10 minutes. So, if you're not looking for that polished, professional video quality videographer stuff, then that's a way to go for sure. I mean, there's something good to say about seeing all the mistakes that, we tend to hide as content creators. So, all right. Well, good on that, dude. I'm looking forward to seeing you more out there. I know we are kind of gearing up. I mean, literally there's 1 week left of February here. Yeah, a full week of February. And then the week after that is March 6th. And I think over on Live Free and Ham, for those that don't know, I'm one of the hosts over on Live Free and Ham with Grouch and Todd, WNSTJ. So check us out over at Live Free and Ham. We got a podcast, a small little podcast over there, nothing big. And we're going to have a whole big smorgasbord of YLs hanging out. They're going to dominate the whole entire live stream, I guarantee. I think last count we had were somewhere right around 10 different YLs, and the list just kind of keeps growing as people hear. So, keep an eye out over on Live Free Ham. If you're not subscribed to that, head over to that YouTube channel.
It's going to be the most YLs in one place on YouTube ever.
Let's break the internet. That's all I have to say. It's I'm looking forward to seeing, all of that kind of in its craziness and fun. And, I'm sure the conversations are going to go insane in many different rabbit holes because we've got a lot of ladies that do soda, POTA, that do, CW, that do digital. I mean, and that are brand new in the scene, that have been there for a long time. So there's going to be a lot of hugging and loving and just basically doing some real cool stuff there. So looking forward to that for sure. All right. Well, you didn't come here for that. I mean, you obviously did because obviously, you get Shannon and I here. But, in essence, we're a brew crew and we want to get into some more POTA stuff for sure. That's, kind of what we love to do here. And so we're going to talk definitely getting into more of the hunter topic. So if you've just joined in, welcome. But if you've been around, last week we kind of did a little bit of the start, set the framework, build the foundation, talking about hunters. I think they are the unsung heroes. They're obviously the folks that help us activators look great. And at the same time, we're trying to help activators understand the mind of a hunter and what they want to do. And so we've got a kind of a 3-part series that we've been working on. So this is episode 2, and we're going to be getting into more of those details. So, if you're an activator, buckle in, learn a little. If you're a hunter, then you're in the right place. We're going to be talking about you. We're going to showcase you. We're going to put you under the spotlight, and give you the cred where the cred's due. And with that, we're going to just roll into our first and foremost, our favorite, segment here. Since we're cruising along here, and I'm going to skip over some of the formalities today. And with that, we're going to do our favorite segment. All right. Okay. Well, it's time for that POTA minute. This is the one small POTA idea that I throw at you, real world observation. Only 60 seconds, guys, just to get you thinking, let's start those wheels turning a little bit. There's no right answer here. Just you start noticing a few activations or a few hundred hunts. And, maybe this might have happened to you. So say it in the chat. Let me know. Ring it out. If you do it differently, even better, let us know. So today's POTA minute, if I could talk a little bit better today, fiber. All right. So with that, this is the POTA minute topic. Good hunting is mostly listening. Yeah, I know that's tough for a lot of us. I suffered very much early on in an early Catholic school, not not being quiet and listening. I was always one of those kids that was sitting in the corner. But with that, good hunting, and it's kind of a theme here, if you're maybe catching on, is mostly listening. Surprising, huh? Hunting POTA is less about calling loudly and more about listening well, guys. Timing your call, following instructions, and being patient pays off. The best hunters often say the least and get logged the fastest. Chew on that for a little bit. All right. Well, so with that, let's get into the main bulk of stuff here. But I'm going to throw out the question. Anybody relate to that? Anybody? What's your experience?
About
Since
listening?
what I just, listening.
Yeah.
See, obviously nobody's listening.
No, I think we talked about this a lot on the last episode about hunters, and we had a poll, right? Do you listen first or do you just jump right in? And what did I say? When you go into a party, are you gonna just start shouting, or are you gonna go up to some different conversations and start listening and see which conversation you have something to contribute to? So, and look at some people, all they do on the radio is listen, right? Like some people are just shortwave listeners, So listening is literally just as important, if not more important, than talking on the radio.
Although I think Handman CT says it's hard to say a lot on FT8.
Yeah, you only get 12, 13 characters.
Yeah, 150 seconds total. I mean, can't get a lot in there. All right. Well, with that, we're going to dovetail into our conversation today. All right, let me take a sip here. And you want to say hello to anybody in there that popped in late and you want to scold them for being late?
Yeah, we got Bricker came in. I would never scold anyone for being late because half the time I am, running late myself.
I thought that was you were saying you were on time every time.
We got Ed W9US just popped in. So hello, Ed. And yeah, a wizard arrives precisely when she means to.
Yeah, blah blah blah. I don't have the clip there. Anyway, all right.
First of all, that quote is from Lord of the Rings, not Harry Potter. So keep your wizard.
I wasn't gonna. That wasn't the clip I was going to. Trust me, girlfriend. I was already on it. I was just I knew I grabbed that one off Lord of the Rings, and I am a nerd. I get it.
Okay, just making sure.
All right. Well, then fine. Now that we got that clarified. So this week, instead of talking what we just kind of built the foundation last week with listening and understanding how to listen and that type of stuff, we're going to talk a little more today on tools, tactics, and techniques. So, but we're not talking gear. This is kind of we're just talking about those 3 T's there. And we're going to dive into a little bit more of that. So, all right. Let's frame it out here. So last week, as we already kind of shared, we talked mindset. We talked about, looking at, things from a, standpoint of 2 ears, 1 mouth. And as Shannon shared her example there, how to read the room and be able to play to your advantage. So we're going to get technical. But let me say this up front. Tools alone made great hunters. And this is something to chew on a little bit. And this is kind of from the wise Confucius of POTA, mentors out there. If tools alone made great hunters, the loudest station would always win. Pretty obvious, and kind of think about it. If we could literally, throw money at a problem and solve it 100%, then radio would be kind of boring. I mean, in essence, there's definitely a component in ham radio and amateur radio in general that, no matter how much you've got money to throw at a problem or buy once kind of cry once approach, there's still a component in this process that it involves you. It involves, listening. It involves, other skills that are not per se able to be paid for. So we're going to talk around those. And so, the tools, the tactics, the techniques is not really so much about gear, because we can talk about gear, and you can find any, YouTube channel out there that talks about gear and the best radios and the best, receivers and antennas and all that stuff. Those do matter, but in essence, it's really just not so much about that today. It's more about what exists in between here and the microphone. So we're going to talk around that, because we're not talking you can't buy yourself, and I found this is another cool thing. You can't buy yourself into a pileup. Like, I can't just throw money at here and go, hey, I'm just gonna buy the POTA operator off and say, although you probably could, I'm sure, it might happen, but it's never talked about. But I can't send them a Venmo and say, hey, allow me, you hear my call sign, allow me to come in and make the contact. Imagine if we do that with the expeditions. I mean, we sort of kind of do, but we throw money at those guys to go there. So I'm sure they have a list of people that if they hear this call sign, they they make sure they get them on the list. But kind of just an interesting, thought process around it. So let's head over to our lovely slides here, because we're not doing a whiteboard session today. All right. So we are going to talk. I'm way ahead here.
These are so much better than whiteboards, by the way.
Well, good. Then I'm glad I've got brownie points on that side. So with this, we're going to talk spotting strategy. And we talked we talked a little bit about the 101, and I don't know why my slide, our lovely ChatGPT, decided to make strategy 10101. I don't know what class that is, but just picked up on that one. So we're going to start with spotting. Spotting's kind of funny, because when you first got in the hobby, Shannon, did you, when you heard about the whole spotting network and the RBN and stuff like that, what was your kind of first take on it?
It took me a while to kind of even know what that was. I remember one of the first times I was on the air, and, I wasn't doing POTA or anything like that. I just had my wire thrown up in a tree, and I made contact with someone, and they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna spot you, okay?" And I'm just like, okay, don't really know what that means. And then,
Okay.
And then it never fails, right? As soon as somebody spots you, you're changing frequency, or you're going off the air, or you're changing bands or whatever. So,
Yeah. Dude, you hit that. That's exactly kind of, it's a funny thing. It's when I started back in the hobby, the one thing with spotters or spotting networks like the RBN and POTA and other things, is that I always treated it like what I call the microwave approach. You go to a microwave, you pop in a bunch of numbers in the microwave, you throw your popcorn in there, and 3 minutes later you get, within that time frame, the popcorn that you expected. Spotting networks don't work that way. Spotting networks, when you get that notification, there's some kind of process that you've got to take into consideration with that information you're seeing. Because a lot of times it's not hey, when that pops up, you're going to be able to instantly make that contact with that person, because it's not a one-for-one. And you said it right there exactly. It's someone spotted you, but then you spun the dial and you went somewhere else. It's you're no longer where that spot said you were. And the information, a lot of times, I think, especially with new hams, and even myself, I sometimes trip myself up, because I don't look at the components of that spot, like the frequency, the time, the mode, and who heard it. A lot of times, the funny thing is that there's the automatic process that's out there, meaning the spotting page on POTA or the RBN sometimes will pick up the call sign if it's a CW, contact and translate that into a spot. A lot of those things we don't always take into consideration when we're looking at, say, ham alert. I don't dive a little deeper and say, okay, when did that actually come in? And then what frequency is it? And what, who spotted it, if it was spotted by a human person or, a computer. And I just take it for verbatim. So I see it. I'm just oh, I've got to hop up and work that person. And a lot of times it's just back to my microwave generation, it's like it's got to be instantaneous for me. It's got to be just like quick, but it's not like that. There's a lot of nuance to this process, and so when hunters are out there, smart hunters know the information that they're receiving or the tool that they're using. They know how to be able to manage that information better, and then apply skills or lessons, past lessons learned to be able to work that content. And we're going to dive into a little bit some of that behind the scenes, so you get to see it, because I know as an activator, I'm out there. First thing I kind of do is I fire up the radio and I just kind of look at the spotting page and I scan for park to parks, because I know those activators are going to be there. They'll probably have a pileup sometimes. They might be just starting, but I'm not really taking any of that information in terms of the details. I'm just like, oh, well, I see them on this frequency, but I'm using it in a different level that I'm working them to make the contact. But at the same time, I'm also remembering where they are in the band space. So I'm not going to park on top of them, or maybe I might get lucky and they may be finishing it up an activation and I can say, hey, can I have your frequency? And I can pick up the, my activation right on that same frequency and kind of get the benefits of a warmed up frequency, band there. But a lot of times a hunter, when they're out there, they're doing this, they're checking that timestamp. They decide, hey, is it 7 minutes old? Is it 20 minutes old? Is it on 20 meters? Is it on 15, 17? Band propagation. They're doing all of this mental kind of checklist in their head to figure out whether or not that, are they going to find first that operator or the activator, or two, are they going to be able to, even kind of work them in, some level, depending on when they sit in front of their radio and start to work them. Now, the one thing I want to kind of make, and what I'm trying to drive home with this, is that it's not a guarantee. The nice part is that we have these tools. I'm glad we do, because we don't all have to sit there. 30 years ago, when I was a ham radio operator in high school, we just had the dial and we just had to spin all the way up and we had to spin all the way down and spin all the way up, trying to figure out where people were. And we didn't have the luxury from a sideband perspective of the spotting network. We had the CW guys had the benefit because they built that, RBN network for their benefits, to be able to help CW operators kind of make contacts. But think about it as, one, it's not a guarantee, definitely not a promise, but it's a clue. I mean, that's the nice part. So we'll put our little clue hats on here and kind of, dissect this a little bit. So kind of get where I'm going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shannon just made a good point saying, believe it or not, when hunting from home, I only use the POTA app to hunt by. But if you don't listen carefully to make sure that the individual calling matches the individual marked on the website. And, I think I said something in chat about that, and I'll say it now for those that are listening, that sometimes when you're on POTA, right, you might have two stations that have accidentally spotted themselves on the same frequency because maybe they can't hear each other, but you might be able to hear one or either or both. You might be hearing the other stations that are calling either one of those stations. Or sometimes, like you were saying, people take over the frequency, right? So, one operator is going QRT, another person comes along and is like, hey, can I take this frequency? Because it's already pretty hot. People know you're here. So then you end up with a, completely different call sign, not what was spotted. So again, another reason why it's important to listen and know, what are you calling? Who are you calling? And, conversely on that, right? Something that you said, what do hunters wish the activators knew? Say your call sign more. I've run into this myself when I'm listening and trying to call stations, sometimes not even things that are spotted, not particularly POTA, but if I'm just tuning the dial, looking on my waterfall and I see these strong signals and somebody's, calling CQ or they're already in a pileup and stations are calling and I'm like, I want to know what this is. Is this just someone that's looking to rag chew? Is this a contest? Is this a special event? Is this a POTA? So, when you're out there, you're, give your call sign, once, every few overs at least. If you're in a pile up, like give your call sign more than every 10 minutes because, not everybody has been with you the whole 10 minutes to know who you are,
Yeah,
and, tell us a little bit about, what you're doing on the
very
air.
much so. Yeah. Don't be afraid to communicate, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
getting at?
that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, ham radio, as I learned as in my 30 years of ham radio operators are the worst communicators. It's a T-shirt in the works there. Actually, Brickerhouse, he had a good point there. Whisper, that would be something interesting to write into if radios had that capability to kind of, we'll say, beacon out, your location and then give, you more intelligence stats. I mean, with AI, that's a possibility. I'm sure some ham, I know contesting is starting to get a little bit into some of that crazy AI and whisper and being able to do, analysis of the frequency space, the spectrum, the propagation in real time. So, yeah, interesting stuff there for sure. So, the last two kind of things with this one is just like, don't assume exact frequency. And Shannon kind of touched upon this, and so I don't want to beat a dead horse, is that, a lot of times, scanning a little bit. We'll spend a little bit more time because, like, all the examples she cited are very much one of those things that can throw you off, can become a challenge, can become more difficult for you to be able to work who you thought you were working in the mix. And I always use the POTA spotter page, tune the frequency, listen, and I've always used the Utah SDR. Oh, good idea. That's a wicked good idea. I didn't think about then SDRs. Perfect idea. I mean, if you've got some time in a park and you can fire that up, or you're a hunter and you use the the web SDRs that are out there, those can be definitely a good tool to leverage and understanding who you can hear and how and confirm a lot of times what you're hearing. And then the last thing is, like, don't be that hunter. And this happens to all of us as a new hunter, especially when you get in front of your own radio in the shack. You just kind of tune there and then start transmitting. Like, big no. Help yourself out. We're going to stress that listen part again here. And those hunters, who have been doing it for a while, know how to be able to listen. And you can kind of, as an activator, and this is for you activators out there, pay attention to your process as you're kind of doing your activation itself, and listen for those stations that pop in that are a little louder than others, or the ones that you pick up for your ear, because those guys are the seasoned hunters. They know how to be able to work the flow, work the process, work the pile up. And, from all the stuff that we're going to kind of talk about today, they're applying those techniques themselves. And so, take some of this stuff away and bring it to your next activation, and then see how it applies to those hunters that you pick up via your ear, or those hunters that seem to come through all the time versus being all in the pile up. And I bet you'll probably see a lot of these same techniques kind of flow out of that. So, the kind of the big takeaway from this one is, like, what creates pile up soup, which is an interesting kind of way to look at it. Because it really is. I mean, you throw everything kind of in, and it's just, at the end, it turns out to be, a good soup or bad soup. But either way, hunters who tune exactly to the spot, frequency, and immediately transmit. That just makes it the worst. Like, ultimately, that could spoil a soup, a broth, by any means. So don't just automatically just assume that they're parked there, they own the frequency, and that's, where you're going to find them. So tune, listen, and assess. So real quick question to throw out to the chat there. How do you guys usually find Activator? And a few guys already kind of mentioned that, so you guys are way ahead of me. It's like you almost have my notes here. But it sounds like a lot of folks are using some great tools there. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And actually, I would say, heck, if you've got a set of tools, head over to our Discord. It's pinned at the top of the chat. I'd love to be able to kind of gather those tools. So if you could, for me, head over to our Discord. If you're not part of it, use that link there at the top pinned. Come be part of the chat. Head over to the Brew Activate, channel there, and let me know what you've already said in the chat here, because what I want to do is add this stuff to our POTA field kit. We've been putting that wiki up for a little while. I've been adding to it from here and there, and I'd love to be able to continue to contribute. Or if you're so adventurous, head on over. That POTA wiki address is here. Let me put that in the chat real quick. And you can head over there, just create a quick free account, and with it, add your own page, add a couple of tools that you're using, because in essence, this is some of the stuff we've learned on our own, or we've kind of experimented and, gathered our own kind of personal toolkits. Let's kind of share that with the new hunters and the new activators out there, because it just makes the hobby that much better. It makes, those conversations that we have with people on the air that much better, because then we have an understanding and a reassurance, versus just kind of like creating, POTA soup. I'm not into that. I'd like to, help people out, so they feel a little bit more confident on the air. Okay. Anything? I think we're good there. We'll go on to our next slide here. So yeah, feel free to comment in the chat there, and we'll make sure we get it in here. Excuse me. I'm still recovering from a cold here. So my voice gets a little raspy. Shannon, jump in and allow me to take a drink. All right. So we're going to continue smart POTA hunting. This is the 201 class here. So we're not talking specific radios today. This is just general kind of stuff. And this is when I went through this a little bit, scouring, the web and forums and putting this stuff together, I kind of got a little schooled myself, and I was like, oh, well, this totally makes some sense. So these are kind of the three things that I think, you can set up within, roughly 30, 50 minutes of your time and, when you're not hunting, that most hunters can get out of this. And so first thing, obviously, is we're not talking power. We're not talking about radio types. We're not talking about, who's got the best receivers, who's this and that. We'll leave all that stuff to the side. This is just something you and your radio that you can sit down and do this. And so the first thing is, let's talk about filter width. Shannon, you know what that is? Oh, where'd you go? You mute?
Oops, I muted myself because Miles came in and was talking to me. But yeah, I absolutely know what filter width is. Filter width is very important.
And very important. And is it better to have, and this is just a trick question here, is it better to have more filter width or less filter width?
Well, it depends, right?
There we go. So you answered correctly.
If you're doing SSB, you're not going to have your filter width set for CW because that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. That's possibly. But at SSB, you can still use it to your advantage and filter it farther down. So instead of using your full 2.7 kilohertz that you have, or 2.9, you can dial that down to be able to take out some of the, we'll say, noise or many other kind of things that are just gumming up the signal. And so
mine is almost always set at like 2.4, I want to say.
That's actually a good setting to kind of play with. And so filter, if you look at filter width, when you have it wide open in a pileup, my gosh, it's like drinking from the fire hose. You're hearing everything, you're seeing everything, you're receiving all of it, and you're not really hearing much of anything except, I'd say, just kind of noise. So again, back to that whole soup analogy, you're just listening to all the noise and all of it kind of just come on top of you. And it's funny, I was watching She's on Frequency's latest video with, why am I forgetting, Shane's brother. Oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. Oh man, this is horrible. Help me out here. You don't remember Shane's brother's name? Oh, anyway. Well, anyway, they were doing a POTA in Texas, and you could literally hear the filter so wide open that the pilot was like, blah, 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 like you heard nothing out of it. It was just like a bunch of garbled, mess. And like, it's funny. I was watching Elle's face, and she went, what the hell is that? How do I make heads or tails out of what I just heard? And, they both kind of looked at each other and went, okay, start it back up again. Maybe we'll get something else out of that next mix. But that is pretty much kind of, the filter. And the filter is kind of the first place you want to start when you're doing this. And this can also help too, as well as as an activator, because I've started to run my filter in a smaller window. Primarily just because it makes it easier for me to pick stuff out. I'm not like fighting against like people that, just splatter or overmodulate or, whatever else. And it just really makes things, a little bit more pleasant as me as an activator to be able to work with and be able to hear. But you're going to narrow as a hunter, and, this again applies both all radios, is that you're going to narrow that filter just down to the point of just below the distortion. So, if you've got a little bit of an adjustment knob, we all do on our radios, we can adjust that. I know with my Flex, I have a slider that I can, adjust it, or I have a couple of quick set buttons to be able to do that. Unfiltered like your beer, Mike. Yes, so sure. The idea is to just bring it down just below all of that extra overmodulation and noise. Once you've done that and you're able to isolate out the voice, and so we're talking again from the perspective of a hunter, if you've been able to isolate now the activator's voice, you're about a third of the way there. You're on good pretty terms. And it's funny because I've tried this consistently with my Flex here at home, especially just recently, Jules, POTA Power. She was doing her first activation on her own. Phenomenal. She did. I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to see it, Shannon, did you?
No, I don't think so.
It was what she called a hot mess train wreck, all in one kind of thing. Like antenna problems, somebody messed up her filtering on her 705 Mark II-G, and all of that stuff. But she was a trooper. She was able to power through, get it working, finally get on the air. I made contact with her, and I was fooling around with those filters on my Flex, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can dial her in down. And I mean, I was running like 2.2 with a little bit of RF gain, dialing back the RF gain there a little bit. And we're going to talk about it in a second. But, once I shortened up that filter a little bit, I was able to play with the RF gain. And the RF gain is an amazing function. Like a lot of people, I think, overlook this and don't really consider playing in this area. But my question to you, Shannon, and even to the chat, like how many of us ride our RF gain all the way up?
I will say most of the time I do have my RF gain all the way up, but occasionally I will turn it down to try and turn down the noise. But of course, in doing that, you're also turning down those weaker signals. So it is sort of like, a give and take, right? Because if there's too much noise, you're not going to hear the weaker signals anyway. So,
although, the funny thing with the RF gain is that we also forget there's a thing called automatic gain control, or AGC. Yes. AGC is a pretty smart, intelligent circuit in most radios that does a lot of the heavy lifting, we'll say, for you. Now, the RF gain, you can control how much signal you bring in by dialing it up or down, like Shannon said. But at the same time, you're creating with your RF gain more headroom. And I kind of like it to this, is allowing your AGC to breathe. Now, a lot of us don't do that. And if you don't, you're kind of putting garbage into the system. So it's like, again, back to that fire hose analogy. If you're just cranking that RF gain all the way up, you're just flowing every bit of signal you can. And that AGC might be, kind of like, well, what the hell do I do with this? And trying to do its best to be able to juggle all the stuff it's trying to receive, filter out the noise, be able to give you like some semblance of a good signal. And one of those things is that, and even in the manuals, again, I went back and looked at my DX10 manual and other radios. If you dial that RF gain back a little bit, and, not by like almost 3/4, but like maybe half, you might find that you're allowing the AGC to do its job, and it will do it very well. It will basically lower that noise floor. It'll make that signal sound a heck of a lot cleaner. And, as if you're thinking, if you're doing this from a hunter's perspective, you're now able to hear that activator's voice, like in maybe clearer, or you might be able to pull that activator's voice out a little bit better because now you're not hearing all of the extra, calls coming, like gangbusters in. You're not hearing like overmodulated signals, overdriving microphones. All that stuff just gets kind of pushed aside, and you clear a path, to the activator's voice. So it's always interesting that once you play around with that knob, you'll improve your overall, experience, I think, with the radio. And it sounds so silly. It's kind of crazy, but like, I know for me, when I first got my radio, manual, I'm just going to plug it in, go and play. And I never really played with any of those features as much as I did, until I really got my, feet wet. And then I'm like, oh, well, what does this knob do? Or I bumped a knob accidentally, and it did, like, it all of a sudden changed the whole dynamic of things. Like, that, any of that similar experience for you, Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, I am not a manual reader person. I will say it's like if I just have walls of text, it's just too much for me. So, I'm more of like watch a YouTube video kind of person. And, like Bricker sort of made sort of a joke, but sort of not a joke. This is my radio. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My radio is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I master my life. But that is like, that is so true, right? Like we should be masters of our radios and really understand the settings and what they do.
Hmm.
So you talked about the AGC. Some people don't like AGC at all. I have AGC on pretty much all the time on all my radios. Usually for SSB, I'll have it on on the slow mode. But
Hmm.
if there's a lot of QSB, I think it's better to have it on the fast mode because it kind of adjusts a little bit more quickly.
Yep.
Or have it on auto. And then what was I going to say? That you have to pay attention, right? Because I know at least on my FTDX10, I think it's on the 891 as well. You can set those settings per each band and it will remember them.
Hmm.
And then like on the FTDX10, it has the dual VFOs. So I actually have one VFO is set up for SSB all the time, and one is set up for digital modes all the time because again, they have, different filter widths. They have different settings in terms of the AGC. The RF gain is a knob on the front. So,
Hmm.
our radios, they have all these knobs and buttons on the front. You can touch them, guys. You can figure out what sounds best for your ears. You're probably not going to break the radio if you're just touching the knobs on the front.
The boss wants you. I'll let you go
Yes.
there. All right. So yeah, 100%. Those are all spot on. Mike, I appreciate Turn Down for What, the 90s, 80s reference there. Just warms my heart that, we're so connected that way. But let's talk, obviously the next piece in this. So this is mic gain, and we touched upon this in many other episodes a little bit, but mic gain, funny thing with this is I'm going to hurt a few people's feelings. Clean audio always beats out loud audio. Like, I don't care how much you're screaming into the microphone. This is not the old, my gosh, I just forgot the movie reference. Good Morning Vietnam, where he's screaming into the old microphone. That doesn't fly here. That's not always going to be the one that's going to get you to punch through. That you're just because you're over amplifying or over modulating, you're not going to just get an instantaneous punch right through the pile up there. Say your call sign once, and this is kind of one of those things that again, I'm not trying to insult people, but a lot of times, over repeating, I learned very early on from a wise mentor, at a few field days when I was in my high school years, that, I'd be like, shouting the club call over and over and over again, because that's kind of what I was hearing. And so I was just trying to mimic that. And he's like, no, dude, slow it down. Wait for the opportune time. It's sort of like, when you're out, trying to hunt or whatever, and you're just waiting for that one time, that one opportunity. That kind of is the same thing when it comes to, obviously working, a pile up or, getting your call out there. Say it once, then wait. Say it once, then wait. Say it clearly, confidently. Don't do it 3 times. Don't try to shorten up. Don't get, crazy snarky with names. We touched upon this kind of last week a little bit. Again, it's all about the rhythm. It's all about patience, and it's not about rushing the process. So you don't want to clip your audio is really what that whole point is about the mic technique. Understanding your mic gain too as well is always going to improve that. Funny story is like, I don't know, those that are on our All-Star folks here, I've got All-Star running with the Liferine ham node, but we're also connected to HR2's node. And you can tell all of the folks that came out of Hamcation, they bought all these brand new All-Star nodes, and their microphone gains were all over the map. They were either too over-modulated, where they're like, blah, 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 just basically making weird noises, or they were just too, they didn't have enough power even to break the PTT. And so, it was one of those things that, if you take a little bit of time to understand your radio's mic gain, figure out what works, jot those settings down, those are going to last you for the long term, and keep, you being able to operate well. And we all know, we've all come across some people that we've talked to on the air in a rag chew or whatever, and their audio sounds really, really great. And you're like, wow, how do you get that? And it's like, because they spent that time learning and understanding and figuring out how their radio mic and gain works, and definitely balances the whole, process, because it's one other component in this whole component of, communication. Excuse me. All right. And last one, obviously Shannon and I are wearing headphones because we know as content creators, it's way easier to block out all the other noise and other interference around us. Same goes for obviously hunting. This is kind of a touchy one when it comes to activators, because I myself, I like to know what my surroundings are, because, I'm maybe in an active park or I'm in a deep woods and I don't want to be surprised by anything. So having a set of headphones is not always great. But if you're a hunter, there should be no reason why. Again, try to isolate and remove all of the distractions. These will definitely help that. It'll also help you focus in on what you're trying to really listen to. And they're always a big advantage, especially for folks, because it will help. And it's kind of funny because, like, I always thought they were a nuisance when it came to field day. And because field day, we used to never have headphones at the stations. And I'd be like, well, why don't we? Like, oh, they're just such a nuisance and I don't want to share with people. And I'm like, well, now you've got things like OHIS where you can bring your own headset and plug in. Well, now you can just literally work what you want. And I always thought it was funny because our CW guys that were over in the tent, you could never hear them at field day because they all had their headphones on. They were all listening to the Morse code. They were all saying focus because they knew that there was a better focus. You could pick up cleaner copy. You'd be less fatigued trying to stress your ears out all the time. So, let's kind of just learn from that. And so I'm going to throw a question out here real quick to the chat there, and feel free to add in. What's one of your radio settings you've never touched? Be honest. And so while we're waiting for those to roll in here, Shannon, I got a quick question for you. In terms of, what's kind of the biggest pileup mistake that you've, eventually figured out yourself?
As being a hunter?
No, activator, or both, either or.
Gosh, I don't even know. I guess, like you were saying,
apparently you haven't learned from anything yet.
In terms of like being someone trying to get into a pileup, that timing does matter, right? Sometimes people don't, they don't give their call sign right at the very beginning when the activator says QRZ. They wait a little bit so that their call sign is at the end, and the activator just hears that like ending, OHT, and then they're like, oh, station with the OHT, come back,
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of are like not so in the thick of it.
Okay. All right. What about activators? Nothing on the activator side?
No, I mean,
You just work pileups?
No, I definitely learned very quickly that you need to thin the herd when you are on a when you're in a pileup, when you're running a pileup, right? So I think, like, I don't know, sometimes activators, they just try to like muscle through it instead of making it easier for themselves and like giving themselves less of a pileup. So very quickly I will start, calling by like, okay, if you have 0 in your call sign, if you have a 2 in your call sign, or, if you are a DX station, or if you're QRP, or if you're mobile, like anything to try to get, less people calling so that you can actually hear the person. Because it doesn't really matter, right? If you have 100 people calling you and you can't hear or understand any of them, so then you can't make the contact, right? Or you're struggling to hear it. But if you can get, maybe 5 or 10 people calling you at once, and then you can work those 5 or 10 people very quickly, and then you can make another call. You actually end up making more contacts than you would if you just kept on with the struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the struggle is real, as they say. I saw they use cliche there, but funny thing with the pileups that I always learned as an activator along the way was, don't let the pileup dictate how you like to run. It's okay to put in pregnant pauses a lot and create space. I think for me, space has been helpful, especially with pileups, because it tells the hunters, or tells the people that are trying to make contact with me, that I am running the show. and you'll have to listen to my rhythm in order to understand when you can insert. And so like I'll do a quick QRZ when I'm first starting out, and then all of a sudden you get the deluge of people and the out of controlness and the chaoticness. I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna hit a pause here and just kind of be silent. And like it freaks people out a little bit, because it's like, why is he stopping this? He should be like, it should be keep going. And then I'm like, okay, all right, we'll start this thing back up. And it kind of calms people down, because it throws off the constant blah blah blah, get the call out there, repeats and all that other stuff. And it helps kind of just establish a foundation for me. And so I've learned to do that. But very early on, I was just like, QRZ. Oh, well, okay, this is kind of funny after a while, but then you're spending more time pulling crap out to try to figure out what you're listening to, more than you're trying to actually like make efficient contact, which is for me something important, because like I want to get as many people as I can in the log. Doing the big mess of, alphabet soup is not fun. I mean, you can't make anything out of it. So, all right, let's dive into our next thing here. So we're going to talk timing and call techniques. So with this, pileups, again, feel chaotic, but they aren't. And I obviously used that as an example before. They have rhythm. And if you don't hear that rhythm, you're just adding the noise. And so that is a hunter's kind of tidbit. If you take anything away here, listen to what the activator's rhythm is and see where it is. Some of them just kind of let it roll, and like it kind of just like it doesn't help me, but at the same time also shows an indicator for me as a hunter that, hey, I'm going to just roll up. I'm going to go find another activation, find one maybe that just started or something like that, and then work them, and then circle back around and see where the pileup is after. Because it's not like, I mean, I like to be able to make contacts with every park I can, but at the same time, if it's just a big mess, like why just contribute to it? Just like let it kind of flow, maybe try to find the rhythm. If you can't, then you just roll up the band and find another activation and work them, and then go back around and do the thing again. And maybe you'll run into a space where that person finally had an opening and they've gotten rid of all of the extra noise. So when should you call? And one of the things with this is very much along the same DX code of conduct. It's always after the activator completes the exchange. And this is one of my pet peeves, and I've said this before, is like QRZ ends the call and says, hey, I'm ready for something new. A lot of times you'll hear QRZ N1JUR. Like, you're continuing. At that point, when I hear QRZ, my mouth is going to engage, the PTT is going to press, and I'm going to start to put my call out there. If you're throwing more on top of it, now I've just gotten squashed by, you saying your call sign after it, and now I'm like, well, why aren't you hearing me? And so then I have to then readjust and look at the rhythm and figure out, well, when he says QRZ, he's going to say his call sign after it every time. So then I should just wait after that. And then, lo and behold, sometimes activators flip the script again, and then they don't say anything. They just say QRZ, and it's like you play this weird dance. So I don't know. Similar experiences yourself, Shannon? Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry. I'm distracted by the radios in the background of your audio.
Oh, let me kill it. That's All-Star.
I'm trying to listen and hear what's going on because I'm nosy like that. That's why I'm a ham radio
it's
operator.
All-Star.
Because I
That's
want to listen
HR20's node.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I try not to say my call sign after I say QRZ. I try to make QRZ like that's the last thing I say.
Yep, 100%. So back to the whole listen for patterns. Some activators, they move geographically, and we touched upon this, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse too much. Signal strength, some repeat, partials. Make sure you read them and understand them. Like that's kind of one of the things that both us as activators need to work on and improve. And again, if you're just starting out, this is all good stuff, but don't take it as like, oh, this is the verbatim and you have to do it this way. Run your activation the way you need to run an activation, but figure out what that is for you, because I think one of the things as a new activator that you don't always take in consideration is, okay, what is my style? How do I do it? And sometimes that develops on its own as you kind of do more activations yourself, or you do them with other people. You kind of pull in little bits and pieces from other people's activations. It's funny because I remember doing activations with Todd and Paul, N1OG and W1STJ of Live Free and Ham very early on. And I found as we started to work more together in dual activations, a lot of times my nuances would show up in Todd's, basically running his, activation, and same thing with Paul. And then I pull a few things from Paul doing, stuff with him. And so, you can kind of glean stuff, but figure out what that looks like for yourself and then try to keep repeating it. Build a good habit in that sense. Excuse me. All right. So, last kind of 2 bits here. Pause, wait for the shifts. And, if everyone is calling every cycle, you're just competing with yourself. You're not competing with, the activator. And so the idea is to really just, try to not add to the noise, but try to be different than the noise when it comes to those, activations or trying to get your call out there. Don't create confusion, create calmness, create openings, create pause, and, that'll help. So here's a little poll because Shannon loves our polls here. So we're going to pop over the poll page here real quick. And so we'll engage you a little bit more. So we're going to throw the question out here. How often do you call in a pileup? I'm curious. Be honest, obviously. Use the # for each of these here. Feel free to, throw those in there. And while we're going through these questions here, I got another quick... where was it here? I've always got these lists of...
What is panic mode? Is that just like you
exactly,
freeze up
just
and
panic
don't
mode.
say anything?
you free up or you start to say something, you press the PTT and you get dead air for like 3 seconds.
Panic at the Disco?
Good band, that's for sure. I didn't know you were Rage Against the Machine and Tool.
Hello.
What do you mean hello? It's not like you're walking around with tattoos and goth and, all that other stuff. So it's like, how am I supposed to know?
You didn't know that I was goth when I was in high school? I
did. Shannon, I am still learning more about you every day as we continue to build this.
Yeah.
Well, impressive. I did not know that.
To be fair and honest, I literally will listen to just about anything, right? Like I really like, I used to listen to a lot more, and I still do sometimes, like Cradle of Filth, Typo Negative, Rage Against the Machine, Tool, Trivium, Dream Theater. Gosh, I can't, 9 Inch Nails.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I'm also into like Bad Bunny right now because of the Super Bowl show. And I'm like, this is really catchy. I can get behind this. I think I'm like every other, middle class American woman right now. And then but I also like to listen to like old 1940s music from World War II, sort of like George Formby, sort of like comedy-ish kind of stuff. So I'm all over the place.
Wow, we don't have a lot of folks that want to be honest. This is the circle of trust, guys. Feel free to chime in.
Listen, okay? I just let you into my circle of trust and told you that I was goth in high school, okay? So
I know.
You guys can, feel free to open up. We're a safe space here. And Bricker said those are all good bands. So, and I'm always open to trying new things. Like the guys from Ham Radio Clubhouse were like, "Oh, have you ever heard of the Midnight?" And I don't think I have. So, I went on to Amazon Music and I did look them up. I didn't get to listen to it yet. Maybe I'll listen to it a little bit today. But hey, if you have more good bands that you think I should listen to, drop them in the chat. After you drop your poll answer.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. Answer the poll. We don't spend all this hard-earned time creating polls for you guys not to answer anything.
Yeah, and I love polls, okay? I say we should have a poll every episode.
And
I think
we probably will.
We should start the poll at the beginning of the show and then just have it running and just keep it down in the little corner.
We can definitely play around with that idea. After you finish workshopping the She-Shack.
Yes, so you know what? Why don't we just throw that out here right now? Is that okay. Eric wants me to have my own segment on the show, and I want to call it the She-Shack, and so I want my YLs to send me some stories or pictures of POTA activations or whatever you're doing in ham radio, whatever you're doing with your clubs. So send it to me. My email is good on QRZ. And If I like your story, then it'll get shared in the Brew and Activate Shannon Shishak. So Shannon, if you're still watching and listening, send me some stuff. You have a pipeline to a lot of different YLs. And for the guys out there, if your YLs, if your XYLs are ham radio operators, if you have YLs in your club, like, let them know, spread the word, spread the love.
All right, cool. Well, good. A lot of banter back and forth. Always good to see that. So
I guess I was
all right.
the only one that was honest and said I call every time in a pile up, because
Yeah,
I
pretty
really
much.
do. I'm like, hear me.
I'm usually every other cycle for most of the fact because for me, it's not a rush because I'm not trying to accumulate the most contacts. I mean, if I make 5-10 contacts, it's great. But in essence, I'm more about just having the experience and enjoying it. So I'll wait for every other cycle. I'm patient enough. All right. So let's go back over to our screen share here. So let's dive into our next slide here. So we are going through this. So this is minimum effective hunter station configuration here. And let me kind of settle something here. You don't need a contest station to be an effective hunter. Hear me with that. You don't need the big guns. You don't need the towers. You don't need the multi-band antennas, although they're nice, and if you can afford them, awesome. But in essence, they aren't going to be the ones to win you, the contact lottery every time, because there's a piece that a lot of people forget that when we get into ham radio is that you need to be able to understand your equipment. You need to understand your operating style. You need to understand you as an operator in front of that radio and microphone and how you interpret the signals and the information that you're receiving in and how you operate. It dictates what types of tools you use and what types of formats and what techniques and, equipment you might have. There are very, very effective contesters out there that run very, very modest stations, but they know how to effectively run them well. And they are the ones that, obviously are also breaking pileups and POTA, because I hear a lot of those call signs, see a lot of those folks, and they're just using the same techniques that they use for contesting, which, if you're a contester, great. If that's your cup of tea. For me, it's not so much. That's why I truly love POTA and being able to kind of, create these small, moments in time to be able to get out, have some fun, play some radio, make some contacts, create some memories, and then kind of move on with whatever else I'm doing in the day. But it is one of those things that, the three things kind of in this process that you want to have is a must have: stable rig, clean antenna, headphones. We've talked about this over and over, and, it's not like we're beating a dead horse, but in essence, you don't have to have high headphones. You don't have to have, the best microphone. You don't have to have an effects processing rack that, does all of these great effects to your voice and stuff like that. You just need to understand the components that you have based off the budget you have and learn to operate them efficiently. I always cite this as kind of one of my things is when I first got back into the hobby 4 years ago, I had an FT450. And those know that is a Yaesu's first DSP radio. Love that radio. Had no waterfall display. When I said I got back in the hobby, I was going to learn how to understand filtering and understand how to use the AGC and the RF gain and the AF gain and all those knobs that I kind of always overlooked. And once I sat down with that radio and learned how to turn up and adjust the DSP and bring people in and out of the whole entire pass band, it was like an eye opener for me, because in essence, once I understood that, it became a tool that I could use no matter what radio I sat in front of, because every radio's got those components in some form or fashion. Some have a little bit more, some have a little less. But if you know how to operate those, then you are going to be an effective activator, an effective hunter. And I'm going to put Shannon on the spot. Like, we did the 24-hour POTA, and I can't tell you how many guys were just like standing back and watching the magic happen when she got down there in front of the DX10, and she was like commanding the pile up, but like she understood the radio settings and what worked for her and how to manipulate the settings. So when she got into that command chair, like, shit just happened. It was simple as that. Like, there was no ifs, ands, or buts, and then when she walked away, the next person kind of stepped up there. It was just like, chirp, 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 nothing. It was literally like, what the heck happened? Who turned off the, the waterfall of contacts? Everyone, well, it's a YL's voice. No, it's not. It was the operator, because I'm sure any other person could have got in front of that same radio if they knew what they needed to do to set up their environment and be effective and just, roll right into whatever they were needing to do, because that's an efficient operator. That is an operator who's practiced, who's learned and understands those tools and techniques, and can apply them to anything that they sit in front of, which is way worth more than anybody who's got like the top-notch radio who can barely turn it on and press PTT.
Yeah, I mean, having a super fancy radio with all kinds of settings and filters doesn't really help if you don't use them.
Yep.
Right. So, yes, I know how to use my FTDX10, pretty efficiently in terms of setting, the filter width and the shift and the, AGC settings and the RF gain and all that kind of stuff that, is right there on the front of the radio. But I will say, when I go and switch to try to use the ICOM, I am just like, I don't understand what I'm looking at here. So there is something to be said to, sort of like branch out to, different radios, different brands, kind of trying to find those same settings on the different radio, because sometimes they're in a little bit different spot. They might be called something different. Or, take me down to the ARRL to W1AW and like put me in front of that Kenwood that has no waterfall and everything is just buttons. And I'm just like, I don't know how to use this radio.
Yep. That's happened. I mean, we very much, we had a lot of people like, I don't understand the Yaesu products, blah, blah, blah. It was at the 24-hour POTA, and it was just like, oh, quit your whining. Just spend 5-10 minutes figuring it out and you'll be fine. Or ask someone who might know. And, that's when Shannon, once again, with her cape and flowy hair, it was standing in front. I was like, hey, idiot, it's this button. Use this. So
I would never call someone an idiot.
No, I did that. Okay. I insert that little, descriptive word there. But yes, there were a lot of people like, a lot of guys were like, oh, he just got schooled. All right. And so these are the nice to haves. And bottom line, and we always stress this because I know they become the attractive thing when in ham radio is pan adapter, which is basically your waterfall, and an amp. Everyone's like, oh, if I have an amp, I'm going to be so much better. Yeah. An amp's great, but an amp's not necessary. And an external speaker is definitely sort of nice to have. But headphones, like I said, and we've already mentioned earlier over and over again, they are way worth more than, say, an external speaker. But, hey, things to think about. So, one other thing that I want to stress to hunters when you're doing stuff, because we all love to sit in front of our computers. Pretty much our shacks these days are not radios any longer. They're computers with a radio included. And so 9 times out of 10, I mean, unless you're Shannon, because she's still doing paper logging. So you still do paper logging when you're at home too?
No, well, if I'm at home, then usually I'll have QRZ open on my computer, so I'll just log directly into QRZ.
So you have a screen open at some point, and it's pretty much in the same room as your shack. So
yes.
Okay, so that's a perfect example. How many of us, I mean, I'm looking at my tabs. I have about 22 tabs open in my browser.
Oh my God. I can't.
I have 3 screens all going with 19 million windows. Imagine all of that information overload, and I have a flex, so I have basically 2 pan adapters and 1 transmit, so I can do multiple, things all at the same time, and I'm just like, bottom line is simplify the process. Close the browser tabs, make things simplified, use only the tools that are necessary for you to be able to get in and do those things. And, you don't have to have the Whisper page open and grid tracker and all of those other components. Those are all just kind of extra added stuff. If you're doing focus on sideband and you're trying to work all the POTA stations, keep it simple. That's always my approach. And then that way you'll be able to just tune in, stay focused, work that, contact, and then move on to the next thing that you're trying to do. It'll help in the long run and help you develop better habits where you just don't become squirrel. What's next? So, all right. Moving along. Okay. So tool overload and burnout. I got to talk about this because it happens a lot. We all have it. We've heard it several times. I know Joe Brett was on the Clubhouse, this week talking about how he finally fixed his ham alert on his iPhone or his smartphone. But at the same time, now he's going to go back and fix all the filtering because now it just doesn't shut the hell up kind of thing. And so we all have that kind of thing in our lives. So tool overload can definitely create more chaos and havoc for you. So understand what tools work best for you. And I know Chris Bricker mentioned a few things like, using Whisper and the spots page and stuff like that. Find those one or two tools that you can keep in your peripheral view that help you achieve the goal of whatever you're working towards. Minimize a lot of the ham alert notifications, the Discord pings. Shannon was talking about that way earlier about how she missed my live stream because, lo and behold, she was getting barraged by Discords. Band scope flashing, that's a big thing. I have my flex up top and I have the full waterfall. I can see signals everywhere. And like, if you see a huge signal pop up, you're like, oh, I'm going to click over there. Oh, I'm going to click over here. And you're doing really nothing except, causing, distraction for yourself. So think about some of that stuff. Pick a band, stick to it, work on it, work through it, and then move on. That's like a lot of the contesters you'll hear. Like when you talk, when they talk about their technique, a lot of them work one whole band, then they start again, they do a second pass, and then they're done. They move on to the next one, and they're very efficient with that process. Take some of that and try to make more efficient opportunities in your hunting experience, and all of that. That'll help both you and the hunter, and effectively be able to get those contacts made, and at the same time, you'll have a little bit more of an enjoyable time. All right, last slide, I think. Yep. All right, takeaway today. The smart hunters, they use tools. Great hunters know when to ignore them. That's big takeaway of advice there. So ignore the stuff that causes noise. Focus on the things that are efficient and get you where you need to be. You don't need more power. You need better timing. That is a tough thing. Timing is everything, as we hear in life, but in essence, same thing kind of applies to radio and contacts. Timing is always important. Figure out what that looks like, how to use it to your advantage. You don't need more alerts. Try to simplify some of that. Cut down the noise there again. Again, we drill this home all the time, but it's kind of funny and it's sad at the same time. We don't listen a lot, so we need to listen more. Use that as a kind of a takeaway today. And so with that, next episode, we're going to go one more episode into Hunters. And then we got a boatload of other stuff that I'm working on that we're going to circle back around when we talked about radio settings and RF and head-to-head matchups with the receivers and stuff like that. So we're going to talk more in that area. And I've got a lot more kind of POTA deep dive stuff that I'm looking forward to talking about. More of the risky kind of side of POTA that we'll talk about. So if you're looking to kind of get in the POTA drama, we're gonna talk a little bit about some of those things and get into more of that. But with that, next week we're rolling into advanced hunting etiquette, long-term enjoyment, and so with that was a lot. Hopefully you're enjoying some of this stuff. I know it's obviously not a very popular topic, although as Shannon and I were sharing, hunters are the unsung heroes. We as activators cannot do activations without the hunters. So we need to help both give them the spotlight, but more so in the sense of understand how they work, how you can, be more effective in your activations, and therefore, be able to, create a really, really, really good environment for all of us to be able to enjoy POTA. I mean, simple as that, man,
Enjoy POTA and just enjoy radio in general. Some of the stuff that we talk about for POTA can be translated to other areas of amateur radio, like just general events, contests, even, trying to get in for a rag chew or whatever.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of stations just generally out there calling, CQ, trying to make a contact. You can figure out, using them as an example, what their flow is, how to insert yourself in there, how to get them to pick up your call. All good practice stuff for, the main event. If POTA is your thing and you're a lot like us, yeah, all that stuff can definitely help out. All right. So last thing, and I just want to make note to this, is that, this is Friday. and this is the end of the month. So we have the live stream for Nearfest. My gosh, Northeast Ham Radio. Wow, that was a little faux pas there. Northeast Ham Radio. This is our usual once a month gathering of all our Northeast Ham Radio family. We all get together, hang out, happy hour. I will not be there. So as I put out a post earlier, I am sad to say, but in essence, I said, go check out Taurus's channel, go check out Shannon's channel, and everybody else, Mike and Grouch and all those guys, they'll all be up there. It is not, and I'm going to stress this because I've had a few people ask this, it is not one channel. We are all a whole bunch of different channels. We all share out at the same time because in essence, we all want to share the love. We all want to basically just, this is a great, cool gathering. So there's not one central area to, all go to. So yeah, check out your favorite YouTuber. If he's in there, he'll definitely be, streaming tonight. So that's at 7. Is it 8 or 7? I always forget. We always change the time. Let me just double check, and I can tell you really quickly, as I should have had this written down already. It is. What time is it, my friends? What time? Scheduled. Why can't I see it? I don't know. I think it's 6, 7. Either way, let me pull this up here. 7 o'clock. There we go. Thanks for helping me out there, Shannon.
I don't know. I probably would probably have to look it up too. No, somebody had joined the chat and they were like, so it was this ADHD life. He came in and he was like, I thought this stream was at 7 o'clock. Is that a different stream? And
yes.
So I was like, yeah, that's that's Northeast Ham Radio. And so we'll be on again. It will be on this channel. It will be on like at least 7 other channels that I don't even know everybody's channels that's going to be on, except I know Mike and to MAK. I know
Tortoise Overland, Grouch.
So
it'll be,
make sure to like, subscribe, share. All of those guys and myself, Shannon, KC10HT, because it will be streamed on my channel as well. And join us later for our Northeast Ham Radio stream.
That is my channel. I won't be on, feel free to use that link, but once you get on there, then you can figure out who's on there and you can go over to their channels so you don't miss out. So make sure if you're already a subscriber here, you'll get notified when this goes live, but please go share the love on everybody else's channel. Don't hang out on mine. I won't be there. I've got some family commitments that I got to take care of that just won't allow me to break free. So these guys can handle it. They're in good hands. So I'm pretty excited. I'll watch on replay for sure because I'm sure I'm going to get crap for not being there. It's always the way it works. Nobody else in that group gets anybody crap, but hey, I'm the only one. Not that I'm bitter. All right. So thank you guys for all hanging out with us today. Hopefully this is some good stuff that you got takeaways from it. We got one more session with this, and so looking forward to it. And with that, if you got anything that you want to share, if there's a topic that's, sticking in your craw there and you want to share it, you're looking for an answer, you need some help, feel free to head over to our Discord. The link's posted and pinned at the top. But, we also would love to be able to come up if there's a topic you want us to dive into, feel free, post it there in the Brew Activate channel. And we'll make sure that, we will get that into the rotation and we'll get some answers for you. So it'll be fun. So with that, as always, as Shannon and I like to say, thanks for hanging out with us today on Brew Activate. Remember, whether you're activating, hunting, the goal is simple. It's always to have fun, stay safe, keep exploring. And then until next time, keep those radios on, the PTT. You're not going to say it with me? Fine.
Oh, the PTT down.
And POTA on.
I usually say POTA.